to introduce a new unit to you. One that you probably won't hear about or read about in any textbooks as far as I know. If we think about syllables, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 syllables. Some of these are stressed, some of them are unstressed, okay? We know from the lecture the other day that there is a unit called a foot which begins with a stressed syllable and maybe have some unstressed syllables following it. And that we know that some of the stressed syllables are also accented. Yeah? Now I want to define a new unit for you. A unit which begins with an accented syllable and continues up until the next accented syllable. So, this unit, which I'll call an accent group, begins with an accented syllable. We must have an accented syllable at the beginning of it. And this may be followed by stressed syllables, or unstressed syllables, or no syllables at all, or combinations of stressed and unstressed syllables, but there must be an accented syllable at the beginning. So let's have a simple example of an utterance which we can now divide not only into feet, but also into accent groups. You think that man's going to go for a cup of tea? Say we have something like that. I'll draw you an interlinear graph representation of it. Oh dear, sorry. Okay, so we've got, let's have a look at the stress status. This is unstressed, that's stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed. Let's have a look at the accent status of it. Well, that can't be accented because it's unstressed, so that is accented. Why? Because of that change in pitch there. Yeah. That is accented. Why? Because of that glide in pitch down there. This is not accented because it's doing the same as everything in front of it and everything after it. So we only have two accented syllables. We have an onset here and the nucleus there. So put that in as well, onset, nucleus. So in that utterance of that sentence, we've got two accent groups. One beginning on the syllable did, and one beginning on the syllable aunts. So that's one accent group there, that's another accent group there. By the way, the sentence would sound like this. She didn't want to answer. She didn't want to answer. Now, if I change that slightly, change the intonation of that slightly, change the pitch contour slightly, say I did this instead, so that now want is lower than the second syllable of didn't, there's a step down, that means that now want is accented as well. Yeah? And in that utterance I've got three accent groups. The first one is didn't, the second one is want to, and the third one is answer. Yeah? That would then sound like this. She didn't want to answer. My first one was she didn't want to, and my second one was she didn't want to. Okay, so change in pitch makes that syllable accented, I've got a new accent group. Right. Why do I want to talk about accent groups? You will see that they are not on your handout. Why do I want to talk about them? Because I want to point out that whenever you put an intonation mark in front of an accented syllable, like a nucleus or an onset or something in the middle of the head, it tells you about the pitch characteristics, not only of the accented syllable itself, but of all the syllables in the accent group. So, for example, if I put a nuclear tone mark here, some nuclear tone or other there, what's it going to tell me? It's going to tell me what the pitch characteristics are for the whole of that accent group. Not only for the nuclear syllable, but for any syllables which are following it. Similarly, if I put a mark here, some sort of head mark here, it will tell me not only what the pitch characteristics of the following syllable, the onset syllable, are, but also all of the other syllables in the same accent group. That means, for example, to find out what nuclear tone is being produced, you have to listen not just to one syllable, but to that syllable and all the following syllables up to the end of the intonation pattern. And if you don't do that, you will make mistakes as to what the nuclear tone is. Okay? So don't be fooled by the mark. The mark does not just refer to the following syllable, it refers to the following syllable and all of the other syllables following that until you get to the next accented syllable, or to the end of the intonation pattern. Okay? Right. We're going to look at just one sort of accent group, not all of them. We're going to look at the last accent group in the intonation pattern, the one beginning with the nucleus, and see what sort of pitch characteristics that accent group can have, or at least some of them, in English. Now I'm going to look at 7 possible pitch configurations which can be attached, can be associated with the nuclear accent group, the last accent group of the intonation pattern. These 7 are important, but they are not the only ones. You can, if you listen to a lot of English speech, hear nuclear accent groups which don't conform to one of these descriptions that I'm going to give you, but fairly rarely. So these are really the most common ones, according to some people anyway, and what they are the 7 nuclear tones which are proposed by O'Connor and Arnold in their book, The Intonation of Colloquial English. Nuclear tone is probably not a good term because that makes you think that the tone refers only to the nucleus. It would be better to call it a nuclear accent group tone. But we better stick to the traditional terminology and call them nuclear tones. There are 7 of them, and they're listed on the first page of your handout: high fall, low rise, high rise, mid-level, fall rise, rise fall. And I've given you the nuclear tone marks too, or the nuclear accent group tone marks. There you can see high fall, and I've put them in front of the syllable no. What does that mark mean? That means that the nucleus itself, the following syllable, is high in pitch and will fall to low in pitch. That mark also means that any other syllables in the tail, any other syllables in the nuclear accent group, will be low and level. If the tail syllables are not low and level, then it wasn't a high fall that you did, or it wasn't a high fall that you heard. It was something else. The next one, a low fall, high fall on no would be something like no. A low fall, with the markers given, that means that you have mid-pitch on the nuclear syllable itself, and it falls to low again, and all the tail syllables are low and level. If they aren't, then it wasn't a low fall, it was something else. A low rise, you have low pitch on the nucleus itself, and, oh no, the pitch rises steadily from the nucleus to the end of the intonation pattern. A high rise, you have mid-pitch on the nucleus itself, and again you have the pitch rising steadily to the end of the intonation pattern. A mid-level, you have a mid-pitch on the nucleus, and that mid-pitch is sustained to the end of the intonation pattern without changing very much. A fall rise, high pitch on the nucleus itself, falling to low, and then levelling out if it has time, and then rising again at the end of the intonation. A rise fall is mid or lowish pitch on the nucleus, rises to high by the end of the nucleus or by the next syllable, then it falls to low, and then it levels out at the end of the intonation. Okay, so that's the description of the nuclear tones. Let's have a look at some examples with some interlinear graphs for you. Now what I've done here is to put the nuclear tone on a single syllable, and then on a syllable followed by a couple of tail syllables, and then by a longer tail. So if we look at the high fall, the first one, this is on page 2 of your handout, we can see that it starts high, as I described, falls to low on the syllable no. If we have some tail syllables, and you can see I've got the two syllables you fool, then what happens is that the nucleus itself starts high in pitch, falls to low, and then levels out. So it goes, no you fool, you fool, you fool, you fool, no you fool. And if we make the tail a little bit longer, then we would get the third part of that diagram, no you silly fool, you silly fool, you silly fool. There's an echo in here. Okay. Low fall. Now, let me make it absolutely clear. If the tail did something else, if the tail didn't do that, then it wasn't a high fall. It was some other nuclear tone. Low fall is very similar, except it doesn't start high, it starts mid-pitch. So instead of no, we get no. No. Then, with the tail syllables, no you fool, no you fool, no you fool, and no you silly fool, no you silly fool. Low rise, the third one on that page, starts low as I described and rises steadily towards the end of the intonation pattern. Exactly how high it gets will depend on how much of the intonation pattern there is left for you to put it on, really. So if there's only one syllable, it probably won't get very high. No, no, no. If there's more, then it will probably get a little bit higher. No, you fool. No, you fool. And you can see that actually the last syllable is will be slightly rising. The nucleus itself won't rise very much. The last syllable in the tail will rise. By the way, I'm sorry, I made a slight mistake here. You can see that fool is actually a small circle. It should be a big circle, so because it's meant to be stressed. It's all right at the end, in the last one. that row. So, no, you fool. And with a longer tail, no, you silly fool. And however long the tail is, you will continue to rise. So if I had a very, very, very long sentence with the nucleus on the first syllable, so that all the rest was tail, all the rest was part of the nuclear accent group, then I would continue rising until I reached the end. Obviously, I would adjust the rate of rise so that I wasn't screaming at the end or squeaking at the end. So if I took a sentence like, when shall I meet you at Waterloo Station on Saturday morning, and put a low rise on when, I will get, when shall I meet you at Waterloo Station on Saturday morning? Okay, rising all the way through. High rise is similar, except that it doesn't start low, it starts midish pitch. So instead of no, with a high rise it would be no. And with some tail syllables, no you fool, no you fool. And with some more tail syllables, no you silly fool. Okay, so those are high fall, low rise, high rise. We then go on to the more complex ones. Actually, I'll jump to the end and deal with mid-level first, because that is very simple. We're at a midish level, and we stay there. So with one syllable only, no. With some tail syllables, no you fool. And with some more tail syllables, no you silly fool. Or when shall I meet you at Waterloo Station on Saturday morning? However long it is, I will stay where I am, more or less. Okay, the remaining two, fall rise and rise fall, are slightly more complicated. If we've got one syllable, then obviously we have no choice. We start high, we go, or high-ish, we go down to low, and then we come up again within the same syllable. So on one syllable we have no, no, no. If we've got more than one syllable in the nuclear accent group, if we've got some tail syllables as well, then what happens is that we fall on the nucleus itself, level out for the beginning of the tail, and then rise at the end of the tail. So, no you fool, no you fool. Speed it up a bit, no you fool. Now, this is a very good illustration about of why you have to listen to the whole of the nuclear accent group to tell what the nuclear tone was. If you look at the pattern of pitch that I've got for a fall rise on no you fool, and for a high fall on no you fool, the nuclear syllable itself is the same, or more or less the same. The difference between a fall rise on no you fool and a high fall on no you fool is in the last syllable of the tail. In a high fall, it's low and level. In a fall rise, the last syllable actually rises. So I've got the difference, no you fall, high fall, no you fall, fall rise. If you don't listen to fool, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the two. Because if I stop at you and don't say the fool, no you. You don't know which one it is until I say fool, which was a fall rise, or fool, which was a fall. Similarly, with a longer tail, we have a fall on the nuclear syllable itself, we then level out at a low level, and then rise towards the end. So, no you silly fool, no you silly fool. And again, it doesn't matter how long the tail is, that pattern is continued. So if I take my long sentence, when shall I meet you at Waterloo Station on Saturday morning? And I did the rise on morning. Now, exactly where do you do the rise? Well, in both of my examples, no you fool and no you silly fool, the last syllable was stressed. If the last syllable is stressed, then you rise there. If the last syllable isn't stressed, but there are some stressed syllables in the tail. The tendency is to start rising at the last stressed syllable. So let me give you another example of a pattern where this would be. Let me see if I can think of one. The last syllable here is not stressed, okay? But this syllable probably will be stressed, id per syllable idiot. So that's where the rising gesture starts. That's the last low syllable, and the rising gesture starts there. So, no, you silly idiot. Oh, I put another syllable in, sorry. I meant to say, no, you silly idiot. Okay. If there aren't any stressed syllables in the tail, then you usually do the rise on the last syllable. So if we take a single word like that, with two unstressed syllables, it's the last one which will carry the rise. Probably. Okay. Rise fall is probably the most complicated one. Rise fall on a single syllable is okay, fairly simple. You start mid-pitch, or maybe even quite low pitch, and then rise to quite high and fall again within the same syllable. So on the syllable no, we have no, no, no. Now, if there is a tail, it really depends how long it is as to exactly what happens. We'll take the longest one first, the one at the end, where I've got no you silly fool. That's fairly straightforward. What happens is that the nuclear syllable is midish pitch, or low, mid to low pitch. The syllable after the nucleus is high, and then all of the other syllables are low and level. Unfortunately, it's not the same as a fall rise. The fall rise spreads the fall rise over all of the nuclear accent group. The rise fall only spreads it over 3 syllables at the beginning of the nuclear accent group, then it levels out. So that nucleus, so rise fall on no, in no you silly fall, will sound like this. No you silly fall. No you silly fall. No you silly fall. If there are only 2 syllables in the nuclear accent group, that's why, say for example on the word never, it depends who you are as to exactly how you do it. Some people do it one way, some people do it another way. I do it usually, I think, the second way, where the nucleus itself is more or less level at a mid to low pitch, and then the single tail syllable actually falls. So, never, never. Now you may think, good heavens, that sounds like a high fall on the second syllable. It looks the same as a high fall on the second syllable. But, of course, the second syllable of never is not stressed. And the second syllable of never then cannot be accented, so it can't be the nucleus. So, never. All right, the other way to do it is the second block on that line, and that is where you have the nucleus syllable itself rising to a high pitch from a mid-level pitch, a midish pitch, or a bit lower than that, and then the tail syllable is low. I'll try and do this. This is not my usual way of doing a rise fall, but it will be something like never, 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 instead of never. Those are both 2 variants of a rise-fall on nuclear accent group where there are only two syllables. Okay, now let me point out a slight complication about this. Only a slight one, right? All of the examples that I've given you, I think all of them anyway, on the syllable no, and the next syllable was you, and everything was voiced. Yeah? Is a voice consonant, O is a vowel, which is voiced, Y is voiced, U is voiced. So we've got voicing going all the way through. Occasionally, when you listen very carefully to intonation, you think, I can't hear any fall there, or I can't hear any rise there, but this chap here is telling me that it's a high fall or something like that. I can't hear anything falling at all. Let me give you an example of that. If we take a single word like that, that's stressed. We're going to make that first syllable the nucleus. Now, I could indicate it like that. With a high form nuclear tone on it. If I said it, I would probably say spectacles. Spectacles. Now, if you listen very carefully, the syllable spec is not falling at all. It's just high. Spectacles. Okay. Why can't you hear a fall? Because this is a short vowel. It is followed by some fortis consonants, some voiceless consonants, which tend to make the vowel even shorter than it would be otherwise. So there is very little time left for the pitch to fall during that vowel. So what you actually hear is something like that. But notice that you still got the general pattern that the nuclear syllable itself is high and everything after it is low and level. So we've still got a high form nuclear tone there. Spectacles. Similarly, if I did a fall rise, which we would have to do like that. Again, same sort of thing. What we've now got is high, low, and a rise at the end, which is a general skeleton for a fall rise nuclear tone. Spectacles. Spectacles. I warn you about this because when you start listening to nuclear tones and try and decide which ones are being said, you tend to listen in very great detail and you expect to hear the falls. You won't always hear the falls. You have to listen to the larger pattern as well as the details of the pattern. Excuse me. All right. Now, some advice for you as to how to go about deciding what nuclear tone is being produced. What to listen to. Well, the first thing I think you should listen to is to the nuclear syllable itself. Generally speaking, trying to decide whether the nuclear syllable itself is high or not high. Very simple decision. You have a 50% chance of being right. You ask yourself, is the nuclear syllable high or is it not high? So that's the first choice. If the nuclear syllable is high, okay, then it must have been a high fall or a rise fall. Sorry, fall rise. What am I talking about? If it was not high, then a low rise first, if you ask yourself that question and you get the right answer, then you cut down the possibilities. If it's high, then it must have been a high fall or a fall rise. If it wasn't high, then it's one of those. You can ask yourself another question. Is the nuclear syllable low or not low? Okay. Now, if you answered high, don't bother asking that question. But if you answered not high, ask yourself, is the nuclear syllable low? So, if it was low, then it was a low rise, or possibly a rise fall. If it was not low, then a low fall, mid-level, or a high rise. Or possibly a rise fall. Now, once you've made that sort of decision, you've got a little group of nuclear tones that it could still be, and you have to decide between them. How do you decide between a high fall and a fall rise? What you do is listen to the end of the nuclear accent group, not the beginning. You listen to the last syllable or the last couple of syllables, and you ask yourself, are those syllables at the same level? Yes? If they are, then what it was a high fall. If they are not, then what it was a fall rise. So, once you've asked yourself these questions, high, not high, low, not low, you've got one or two nuclear tones that it still could be. You then start listening not to the nucleus, but to the end of the tail, the end of the nuclear accent group. The first question you ask yourself is, are they at the same level? Say low level, yes, high fall, no, fall rise. If you have come to this decision here, low rise or rise fall, again, ask yourself about the last syllable in the nuclear accent group. Is the last syllable in the nuclear accent group low? Yes, it was a rise fall. No, it was a low rise. Here, if it's not low, ask yourself, is the nuclear syllable, so the end of the accent group, low? Yes, low fall. Not low could be either of those two, mid-level or high rise. And the way to decide between those is, well, it's usually quite easy to tell whether something is mid-level or not. But ask yourself, is the last syllable very high? If the last syllable is very high, then it was a high rise. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of practice at doing this. So, clear out your ears, listen carefully. I'm going to say some sentences. And the first job you've got to do is to find out where the nuclear accent group begins, i.e. what the nucleus is. Once you've listened to it a couple of times, I'll be very kind and tell you where the nucleus is. Okay, so then you can start listening, try and put this into practice, so you can decide whether the nucleus syllable is high, and etc., etc., etc. Okay? All right, the first sentence sounds like this. How did you get him to tell you? Listen to it again. How did you get him to tell you? Listen to it again. How did you get him to tell you? Now, have you all decided where the nucleus is?
Tell.
Tell. Right, okay. Listen to the two syllables now, tell and you. Ignore everything else. Don't be distracted by what comes before the nucleus. Forget it. Listen from the nucleus to the end. So, how did you get him to tell you? How did you get him to tell you? Is tell generally high or not high? Tell. High. So, it was either a high fall or a fall rise. What do we have to listen to now? We have to listen to you. Okay? Is that low level or does it rise? How did you get him to tell you? How did you get him to tell you? So it was a high 4. Yeah, good. That's what I said, in fact, there, with a high 4 nuclear tone. All right, we'll do another one, if you can hear me. Again, remember, first job you've got is to find out where the nucleus is. Sounds like this sentence. Where did you leave your handbag? Where did you leave your handbag? Where did you leave your handbag? Where's the nucleus? Hand. Yes. Remember, the nucleus is one syllable. The nuclear accent group then is handbag. Listen to it again. Where did you leave your handbag? Where did you leave your handbag? Nucleus high or not high? High. So it was either a high 4 or a 4 rise. Let's decide which. Listen to the end of the nuclear accent group. Where did you leave your handbag? Where did you leave your handbag? High 4 or 4 rise? High 4. I did it again. There it was. You were all expecting me to do a 4 rise, but I didn't. All right. Now, listen to this. Next one. Sounds like this. Does she always make such a fuss? Does she always make such a fuss? Does she always make such a fuss? Where's the nucleus? Fuss. Oh dear, we've only got one syllable. Okay? There are no tail syllables, so this is a bit trickier. So listen to it again. Ask yourself generally whether the nucleus is low or high or not high. First, does she always make such a fuss? Does she always make such a fuss? Not high, is it? No. Is it low? Listen again. Does she always make such a fuss? 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 Yeah, pretty low. Is it low? So it could be a low rise or a rise 4. But listen to the end of the nuclear accent syllable. If it's low, then it was a rise 4. If it's not low, then it was a low rise. Does she always make such a fuss? 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 Slow it down. Fuss? wasn't low, was it? It was in fact going up, so that was a low rise. Okay. Listen to the next one. There'll be plenty of people you know there. There'll be plenty of people you know there.
No.
Where was the nucleus?
No.
No was the nucleus, yes. Now, nucleus high or not high? Listen. There'll be plenty of people you know there. High, yes. So it could be a high 4, it could be a 4 rise. Which one is it? Let's see. There'll be plenty of people you know there. 4 rise. Because there was not low and level, it was actually low and rising. There, no there. Anybody think it was a high 4? If you did, you're not admitting it, obviously. Try the next, so that's what I said. There'll be plenty of people you know there. Next one sounds like this. Try to get there a little earlier tomorrow. Try to get there a little earlier tomorrow. Try to get there. Earl is the nucleus, yes, so we have to listen to earlier tomorrow to decide what the nuclear tone was. The nuclear action group is earlier tomorrow. Try to get there a little earlier tomorrow. Try to get there a little earlier tomorrow. Earl, high or not high? High, okay. And what about the end? So it could be a high 4 or a 4 rise. What about the end? Is it level or is it rising? Try to get there a little earlier tomorrow. Level, so it was a high 4. Okay. How about this one? Would you like to see my new computer? Would you like to see my new computer?
Line.
Would you like to see my new computer?
Like.
Like is the nucleus, is it? If like was the nucleus, we've got a very peculiar tail. Listen to it. Would you like to see my new computer? Well, tails don't do that, do they?
What? two groups.
No, oh no, I wouldn't be so horrible. No, we've only got one. We've only got one intonation group in all of these. I forgot to say that. I'm sorry. Would you like to see my new computer? Where's the nucleus? Pute. Okay. Now, the trouble is that sometimes the onset syllable, which is like in this case, sounds more prominent than the nucleus syllable. Okay, but don't always expect the nucleus to be the most audible, most prominent syllable in the word group. Sometimes it isn't. What you have to do is, if you think like is the nucleus there, you have to consider what comes after it. Now, it's not one of these patterns that I've given you. It was doing that. And tails, according to that scheme, don't do that. So therefore, like can't have been the nucleus. Pute was the nucleus. Okay, so the nuclear accent group was puta. Sounds like this again. Would you like to see my new computer? High or not high? Pute.
No.
High. Not high. Would you like to see my new computer? Puta.
Not high.
Not high. No, not very high at all. So it could have been one of these low rise, rise fall, low fall, mid level, high rise. Okay. Listen to whether it's low or not low. Would you like to see my new computer? Puta. Puta. Not as low as it could be. Okay. Sort of midish. So it could be a low fall, a mid level, or a high rise. Listen to the end of the nuclear accent group to decide which one. Would you like to see my new computer? Puta. Puta. T is low, wasn't it? T. So it was a low fall. Would you like to see my new computer? We'll do two more of these. Next one is, I think they're going to Italy next week. I think they're going to Italy next week. Where's the nucleus? Week, okay. Tricky this one because we've only got one syllable in the nuclear accent group. Is it generally high or not at the beginning of the nuclear syllable? I think they're going to Italy next week. Week, yes, fairly high, isn't it? What about the end? Is the end just low?
No.
Would you like? Oh, sorry. I think they're going to Italy next week.
Fall right.
It went down and then up again. The end of the nucleus was not low. If it were a high fall, it would be weak. Weak. One more. Sounds like this. It isn't the first time it's forgotten to come. It isn't the first time it's forgotten to come. Come was the nucleus, yes. Okay, so listen to that. Come.
Not high.
Not high. It didn't start high, did it? It wasn't come, but come. Come. You have to listen to the as well as the vowel this time. Come. Anybody know what it is? Rise fall it was, yes. Okay. Are there any questions about any of